So, like I was saying, Sorsby called me before. No, we're live. We're live. I'm just kidding for all you people out there.
Is
I'm
this
just
sponsored
kidding.
by Fanatics or Prize Picks or?
I'm just kidding. How's it going, man? Do a quick introduction and explain to people your obsession with Sorsby and why you hate him so much, just so they know.
No, you know what? I hope he makes it to the league and that he starts in a game so that we can see his little head pop up and know whether he's going to say Cincinnati or Texas Tech.
If he says Texas Tech, that would be a joke. Of course, he's probably mad at Cincinnati because they had a rat on him, right?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah, you mean maybe. Okay, if you're a lawyer, you'd be arguing that Cincinnati ordered the code red. Don't even be trolling me like that. Don't even be trolling me like that. So give everyone a quick introduction, though. We're office hours live. Assuming I hit the button right, 1 to 2 Central, Monday through Thursday. The best M&A attorney that is also a BYU fan is on the show today.
That's quite the caveat. I think
I had to caveat it.
Yeah, I'm Dallin Drescher. I'm an M&A attorney. I'm based out of Salt Lake City, Utah. I work for a firm called Buckhalter. We have offices all over the Western United States. And to get the legal disclaimer out of the way here, anything I say is my own personal view and it is not legal advice. If you don't like something I say, I'll happily refund the free entry fee to the webinar. But yeah, been connected with Brian.
Can we pass a law that, like, when you interview a CPA or an attorney, we don't have to make this disclaimer? People. It's all entertainment. We are professionals. We do know what we're doing, but we can't tell you precisely. So, like, it just drives me crazy. Okay, we want to know, or I want to know, what kills M&A deals and how to avoid it. And you're an expert in that, killing them and saving them, both sides.
I guess. I don't know about an expert, and maybe my advice is going to be a little contrarian to what you might say.
I like it. A little spicy.
Twitter, but, I think we overblow sometimes what's actually killing deals. Like, I think, and it's probably the nature of social media, right? But like, you get on Twitter and you read about typically all these like, oh, the seller hit this crazy thing and it caused the deal to blow up last minute, or we had some attorney that was rogue and causing all sorts of issues, and so the deal couldn't close after we wasted months and months of time. And it's not that those don't happen, right? But like, a lot of deals are closing, like most of them in my case. So I don't know if I'm just getting lucky or maybe we're just that good over here, right? But deals get done all the time, and like, I don't think there are some businesses that are going to have a hard time selling, right? Yeah. But a good business with decent people involved in it, I think most transactions have a way of getting done if you're mindful about, potential issues that come up ahead of time.
Yeah.
What are you seeing, right? Like, what do you think are the most common things killing deals lately?
I think what you're seeing on some level is probably a little bit of hype, but also what I've seen that kills deals is when the buyer or seller teams aren't in the same universe. Like, one's a divorce attorney, one's an M&A attorney, and then stuff like that. Or the person taking the company to market didn't tell the seller to clean the books up. And so their stuff is just all whack, or they're not getting good advice early on in the process to mitigate the risk later on. And so that's what I see, that it's like, if you don't have adequate team in place, then a deal is going to fall apart, because when you get down the road and the money's on the line, the questions are going to get asked. And if you've been prepared for it, then you're ready for it. And if you haven't been prepared, then all of a sudden the deal will fall apart. So what I've seen is usually, to your point, if it's a good team in place, most of the time it's going to work. If it's a bad deal in place, and like, we were talking to a group the other day, and it was referred to us, and they had been brought 2 offers, and one offer wasn't any good. The other offer was okay. But, talking to them, you could just see that the broker that they had engaged really hadn't done much with them. Yeah. And so I don't know if they'll end up using us or not. They're not happy with that broker. But as we talk to them, we're going to have to figure out, okay, what were they told about this process? Do we have to educate them on certain things? Because they're good dudes, got a great business. Like, it was really good. But have they been educated on what they're about to go through? Because they had 2 offers on a business that had like a 2 or 3 million EBITDA business, like,
Yeah.
like, it's the broker wasn't doing anything. And so you
Right.
go, okay, well, how much else is there that he didn't do, which might result in it not selling if you push it too fast. And so we had to kind of educate them if they do sign with us. So that's what I would say.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that comes to like when I was trying to like boil down what's a core reason the deals aren't closing. I think at the end of the day, it ultimately just comes down to somewhere there's a mismatch in expectations, either in both sides or just one side being unrealistic. And to caveat, this does change slightly depending on where you're fitting into the market. And I have a little bit of a unique view of that in terms of I spent a lot of time doing like Main Street SBA type deals. I also do larger, like right now, believe it or not, I have one deal that's $400,000 and I have one that's 95 million, right? So like
That's
those
right.
are very, though if those are going to die, they will probably die for very different reasons, right? But at its core, they probably come down to the same idea of like somewhere someone's expectation wasn't aligned with the other side. Because if they are, typically all the fringe stuff we can figure out, right? But if you have a seller that like has a business with super high customer concentration and really messy contracts and all sorts of hair on it, and they're coming in and saying, well, my friend, he got a 10x valuation. Like that's just not going to work, right? On the flip side, if you've got a buyer that like comes in and just thinks that they're going to take advantage of a seller just because they don't do M&A, like that's usually a recipe for disaster too. So I think what you mentioned about like having a good advisory deal team in place is priority number one if you want to make sure that your deal is going to close, because they're the ones that can actually give you perspective that's not going to be heavily influenced by your own emotions. They're the ones doing deals all the time. They know what the market is. They know how to read people. And so having a good team in place from the start significantly reduces the chances of your deal dying for something that really could have been prevented down the road.
Yeah, I think that on the sell side, you have to educate the owner that most of the questions that the buyers are asking, if they're a good buyer, are normal. They might feel like they're trying to be sneaky or shady or probative, but they're just normal questions. And if you do a good job of that, then yes, you should resolve some of these issues early on, because you tell the seller, hey, the buyer's going to ask about this. They're going to want to know about this. And here's why they're going to want to know about it. But it also goes back to, you mentioned the 2 deals you're working on, the 6-figure one and then the 95 million one.
Yeah.
Well, the problems, I know nothing about these deals, but I'm going to guess on the lower end deal, a problem probably is going to be owner dependency. The owner's probably going to be tied up in a lot of that stuff. Well, when the owner's tied up in a lot of stuff, the more he's tied up in, or she's tied up in, what happens is things like customer concentration, or the books aren't as clean, or they don't have SOPs, or all these other things become part of the process. A $95 million company is really hard to get to 95 million valuation if you don't have those, if you have those things. And so, yeah, I saw someone today tweet about what got you to 300,000 can't get you to 3 million. It's the same thing for here. And so as you're growing, you're trying to grow your company. If you want to kill your deal, then don't update your SOPs. Don't remove customer concentration. I mean, don't fix customer concentration or owner dependency. Don't do that stuff. But the more that you do, the easier it becomes to unload your company. And I think that a lot of owners, and maybe this is just our generation because our parents didn't grow up in the M&A world. Wasn't really a thing for them. But it's like my kids, if they get to ownership or whatnot, their generation, their parents, us, will have told them about this stuff. And so I do think the next generation behind us is going to be a lot more educated about getting your company ready to be sold in the future. Whereas we're kind of in this weird spot to where some are great at it, but some just haven't prepped at all, and they wait too long. And then now there's buyers everywhere. People want to buy companies, and they don't have the company in place to sell to them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think in terms of like the preparation and getting systems and things in place, like overwhelmingly, I will say probably the number one, like I guess non outlier, non silly kind of parties being weird thing that does kill deals is just like a financial mismatch, right? So you go under LOI based on certain numbers, and then QOB comes back and buyer says, well, we don't think your business, we don't think your numbers are supported by the documentation you gave us, or for whatever reason, like it just doesn't support the valuation we originally agreed upon, right? And I will caveat that like there are plenty of times that deals still go through regardless of that, right? Like you just come back to the table and you figure out a solution that works. But as a seller getting ready to hopefully one day sell your company, it's important that you put good, strong procedures in place to document your financials. And I think that's especially true in these not small companies, but like family owned or single owner companies that like they tend to play a little more Western than a more sophisticated operation in terms of like what finances, what expenses are personal and what belong to the business, or how are we defining like an owner salary versus just using it as a side bank account. What are we doing with working capital? Like, are we just leaving all the extra cash in, or does the company actually need that amount of money? Like, all those things are things that like from a legal perspective or like a day-to-day operation of your business, it's probably not going to affect your bottom line, right? But when a buyer comes to examine your books to support evaluation, even if you can convince them of your position, it's always going to be gray, right? And so the earlier on you can bring in like a good, maybe a fractional CFO if you don't have the need to hire one full time, or an exit planner type advisor. Those things can be really helpful just in terms of like not leaving any room for doubt to support the valuation you're hoping to get.
Well, I'll give you a real story from earlier this year. Had a seller, great business. He has one client. He nets about $2 million. Okay, that's great.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
great. He's ready to sell, though. He's desperate to sell. Do you think it's worth anything near what he wants it to be?
No.
No, not even close, right? But from his perspective, it's worth a lot of money because it nets him $2 million a year.
Yeah.
But from the buyer's perspective, it's not worth nearly that. And he said that a PE group reached out to him, and the call was going good until they asked about the customer concentration, and that was it. He said that was it.
Yeah.
And I think that what he doesn't realize, and what I try to emphasize to him, is that his business is owner dependent. And because it's owner dependent, he has one customer and he feels really safe. He doesn't understand why people wouldn't buy for this because he has those relationships with those guys, and he's really strong with them. Like, it's a really good customer,
Yeah.
really deep with them. But from a buyer's perspective, you're talking about writing a check for, $7, 8, 9, $10 million. Well, that one customer goes away, you don't have anything. And so if you don't fix that owner dependency, um, it can really mess up how you look at it. And then another story, which is really sad, that guy's still doing good. A guy reached out to me, or was introduced to me. He was doing 30 or 40 men a year and got there in a few years. He's bankrupt now because he was billing 3 million for a job that cost him 3.5. And
Oh,
and he was sending out invoices at 9 o'clock at night. And so
mhm.
he didn't hire more office staff to do that kind of stuff for him. And he didn't
Mhm.
realize that his contractors and vendors were overbilling him, or billing him 3.5 at least. And so as you grow, you have to fix this stuff. Until your point about, what kills deals. Well, some things that kills deals, you see the stat like 80% of don't sell. Well, it's stuff like that. Like stuff like
Yeah.
that buyers are looking at and go, no, we can't get past that. I think for those 20% that close, according to the stats at least, they fix that stuff. And to your point, it's, yeah, there's gonna be some issues we can work through, but we can kind of fix this.
Yeah, no, I think that's absolutely right. And just being mindful about the preparation really does most of the work for you. Like it's the problem comes, and problem is probably a stretch of the word. But we see this a lot, especially nowadays with how many buyers are out there. In terms of, you'll have a seller that's just like going around operating their business as they always have, and then they get inbounds all the time from, hey, I want to buy your business. And so they jump into a sales process where they weren't really thinking about selling and definitely weren't doing any advanced preparations for selling. And then all of a sudden you have buyer on one hand who assumed that maybe there was a little hair, but it wasn't going to be anything crazy. And then seller on the other hand that was like, I was just running my business and you came and offered me a bunch of money to buy it. Like, sure, why not? Everything's for sale for the right price, you know? And there's that disconnect that I was talking about at the beginning. That's just, you were never on the same page to begin with. And so it's going to be really hard to get a deal done that way.
Yeah, and I think what you said is everything is for sale for the right price. A lot of owners I've spoken to, they would say that, and it's like, well, the right price is going to be contingent on the business you've built. Yeah, they're not going to just write you a check for $47 million because that's the right price. They're going to look at it, and the hard thing is that there's not really a Zillow for these deals. So you have to look at comps, and the comps aren't, it's not like if you go buy a car, you can look at all the cars and say, okay, where the houses, but for businesses, it's just not the same. There's always these little differences, marketing, sales, operations, whatever it might be, which can impact valuation. And so these companies, they're going to be very probative in nature. And if you buy a bad car for $20,000, that's a lot of money, but you can recover from that. If you spend $45 million on a company, it's a bad deal, unless you're a giant, that might be the end of you. And so it's a huge risk. And so I think more owners are becoming aware of that. Like, hey, we got to de-risk it. But I want to ask you from a legal standpoint, what are some of the things that you see that companies should start doing right now? That's I say a low lift. It's got to be done. Maybe it's a 3 months, 6 months, 9 month process, but they should start doing today in case that buyer shows up and they want to buy the company.
Yeah, I think from a legal side, like the risks that we typically see come up for a deal that, ultimately probably aren't going to kill the deal, but may affect valuation. And depending on the severity, sometimes they become showstoppers, right? We're typically looking at like 3 or 4 things, right? Like number one, we're looking at what does your organization look like from a documentation standpoint, just as far as like company formed, who are the owners, who are the employees, and things related to that, right? Like I'd say probably the majority of companies are out there kind of just operating on we filed something with the state and then we've just kind of winged it since, and we all understand how it works, but there's not, the documentation we have is outdated or we never put any documentation down, right? That's a concern for a buyer, not because they don't trust you, but like what happens when you had a partner that left 4 years ago, finds out that you're cashing out, it was never documented, and he comes to the buyer and says, actually, you owe me my 40% of that $20 million you just paid them. Like, that's a serious risk that they're going to be worried about. And so what if another one that comes up is like, what if you've been promising your CEO certain amount of benefits or bonuses or things like that and nothing's documented? How do we determine what promises have been made to him in the past if there's no employment agreement or anything like that? All of these are like super insanely simple things to do at the beginning, but to go back and retroactively fix them is really hard and still leaves the risk open. So that's probably item number one, is like hire an attorney and pay him a few $1,000s to like set up your company correctly. When you're bringing on employees, like make sure you get employment agreements, and just make sure everything is documented along the way so that there's a clear record that anybody that has no idea of the backstory could pull those docs and say, okay, this is what the company looks like today and here's how it got there.
Well, I think if I were to summarize that, if you get on social media, it's the Wyoming LLC strategy or this strategy. Yeah. And okay, I'm not commenting on the viability of those strategies. What I'm saying is that most companies aren't even doing what you're saying. And so those advanced strategies, if they're real, let's assume they're real. Yeah. If you're not doing the basics, you can't nail the advanced strategy. And the basics cost people more often than not. It's just doing the basics. And so I can't tell you the number of attorneys and CPAs I've talked to who would say, just get your LLC set up in the state you're in. Don't go to Delaware, because the odds are you're going to forget to file, you're going to mess something up. And so it's not, listen, we said the caveat, it's not, It's not
Yeah,
a
right.
just an advice, but they've seen clients who forgot to file their Secretary of State license and renewals and stuff like that, and so they didn't take care of that because they tried to file out of state because that was an advanced strategy. It's like, well, you can do those things, but you gotta get the basics right. And it's I guess the frustrating thing for me on some of this stuff is when I talk to other people on this side of the table, the consultant side, the advisor
Mhm.
side, whatever, we all kind of say the same thing, but we can't get the owners to listen to us sometimes. Sometimes they do, but we always can't get the owners to listen to us. And is it because the Wyoming LLC strategy is the sexy new thing? It's the shiny new object? Like, why is it that the boring stuff you just described is so hard to convince people to do?
Yeah, I think I think, to be honest, there's a little bit of human nature. Um, I maybe a story that's similar. So I as an attorney, I track my time and I'm supposed to put it in every day, like what time I spent on what matters. And usually I do that every day. Sometimes because I'm busy between different matters or whatever, I miss, putting it in right away. I miss it for the day, then I miss it for 2 days, and like eventually like a week stacks up, right? And if I miss a whole week, like it's going to take me at least an hour to go back through and put all that time in, right? But if I had just done it from day one, like it would have taken me like 30 seconds to a minute each time, which is like nothing as it happens. But what waiting to do it is the painful part. And like I convince myself in the moment that either like I'll get right to it or I have more important things to do. And it just always comes back to bite me in the butt. And so I think the same thing happens with a lot of like the dotting the I's and crossing the T's as far as the business. It's like, well, we're busy out, managing customers and making sales and all this, and we'll get to that later. Like we know we need to, we'll just get to it down the road. And tomorrow always gets pushed and pushed and pushed until, it's kind of too late to fix. And so at some point you just kind of have to tell yourself you're going to buckle down and do it. And I don't know if that's a very great answer on how to do
I'm
it,
not
but
sure why you called me for not following up on the work I'm supposed to do. I don't know why you had to call me out for that. Okay. I was thinking of all the to-dos I'm supposed to do. I'm like, oh man, dude's calling me out right here at at 1:30 on a Thursday. Good night. But I think you're right. One thing I would say is, with a lot of what we're talking about, for a fraction of the price, you could have counsel or a CPA that like the filings for the Secretary of State or the legal documents. You can have someone whose job it is, and they have errors and omissions insurance. They have other things to protect them to make sure that they're supposed to do it for you. Whereas, like, you might hire an admin to do this, and it might be a great admin, but they're not going to be up to date on all this stuff. So it's something that you can outsource. And I think, again, going back to the 20, 30 years ago, the fractional world, the outsourcing world wasn't really as vibrant as it is today. It's like, you can get these people to come in and do this work for you. And so hopefully that kind of fixes some of that. I don't know, but I'm curious your stance on AI, because we've kind of talked about it on X some. For like legal stuff, some of the stuff that you mentioned, is AI something that can help with this, or shy away from AI for right now?
Yeah, I think it can help. I would use AI as like a roadmap for what you should be doing, right? Like asking AI questions on like, hey, I'm going to do this. What things should I be thinking about? Or I'm going to, I want to give stock to my employees. Like what documents would I need for that? Or what considerations, or why would I do or not do that? Like using it to inform yourself and kind of guide the process has been really good. And I even do that, on things things I'm familiar with. Like sometimes it's good to just kind of use AI as a sounding board to talk through issues. I would hesitate to use AI for like any sort of documentation, only because AI makes decisions that are kind of unexplainable sometimes. And like drafting choices and choosing to prioritize issues and in the effort of fairness, which is definitely not what you're looking for with like business organizational documents.
Yeah.
And so I would still recommend hiring a
Yeah.
lawyer or some outside advisor to kind of talk you through the actual papering part. But AI can be a great tool to point you in the right direction as far as like, what am I missing from an organizational standpoint that I should have in place?
Yeah, I'll give the listeners kind of a real world example. We used AI. I was going through some health stuff to look at the test results, and it was really good for the scans and all the
Mhm.
nerdy doctor language. It could break it down for us. But it ended up telling us that I might have this type of condition. And it had all the test results and all that stuff. And so we just asked the doctor, "Do you think it's this?" And he goes, "No, it's not that because this test, which AI had access to, eliminates that." And so
Mhm.
we're like, "Okay, cool." But so if you think about a legal matter, you're making a decision. AI could have the contradictory evidence that would eliminate whatever it is you're trying to put in there, and it would forget that or overlook that or whatever. So in this case, it didn't matter. The doctor was able to say, "No, it's not that," because whatever. But in a legal, if you're trying to draft a contract or whatever, that could be very, very dangerous. It would seem that AI could just overlook that or forget about it or whatever it did, hallucinate, whatever term you want to use. It's like, yeah, man, that was, I wouldn't want to do that. Now, you wanted to say, and it's okay you didn't, that my QSBS Notebook LM is tops of the world. I know you want to say that. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It's okay. If you want to say it now, you can, but it's
It is pretty great.
it's funny. I've showed it to a few people, and it's so slow though, man. It drives you crazy. It drives you
Yeah.
crazy. I do
Yeah.
though AI. What I've told clients in the past is if they've called me like, "Hey, the buyer sent this agreement over, we look at it." I say, "Well, yeah, I'll look at it, but if you get sued or want to sue them, you're not calling me." Like, I'll look
Right.
at it, but it doesn't mean anything. That's the same thing with AI. AI can look at it, but you're not calling up Chat GPT or Claude. It could say, "Hey, get your legal team down here to represent me or to sue these people because your AI messed something up." So it has a role, but
Yeah.
remember, when you need the actual advice or you have to go to court or litigate or whatever, it's not going to be there for you.
Yeah. And I think, so a lot of us don't understand. I am no expert on this. I don't understand quite in depth how AI works, but I had someone explain to me that like AI isn't actually thinking the way we think it is. It's more just predicting what the next likely word is in a string. And so when you're making decisions, that can get really tricky because if it's just kind of predicting what the most common next outcome is, that might not match what you're thinking of. And like, again, I'm not here to bash on AI. Like I use AI on everything I do at this point, and I've spent a year plus now like tailoring my AI tools to be like the most super powered junior associate that they could be. Like I have the instructions all set up, like to the point where sometimes it's annoying because like I'll ask a question on like what restaurant should I eat, and it's like trying to give me a legal memo of like the pros and cons of like it's treating it like a lawyer task and not as a just, tell me what restaurant's good. But I have all that. Like, I feel like my AI is very good at legal stuff.
Hmm.
And I run everything I do through it to kind of double check myself and check for
Hmm.
errors and all sorts of stuff. And I spend probably, I don't know, 60% of my time either ignoring comments that aren't relevant or
Yeah.
telling it that it's wrong or correcting it.
Yeah.
And so that's not to say that it doesn't provide incredible value in use. I really hesitate relying on it because of those limitations. And so,
Yeah. No, it's one of those things. It's uh, like if people were talking about the AI slop content, well, what I would say to them is it doesn't take long to get AI to train into someone's voice. Like I can see Hormozy right here on my Twitter screen. You can go
yeah,
download all of Hormozy's transcripts, and you could have Claude write just like Hormozy would sound. Not just like it, but real
mhm,
close enough that most people would never know.
yeah,
If you want to do that. So the content AI slop thing is only because people aren't training it. But when I say it's going to write like Hormozy, it's going to be based upon what Hormozy has said. And then when you ask it questions, it's going to try to guess on that. And it might guess what Hormozy would say or he wouldn't say. And I'm not saying clone Hormozy's voice here. But to your point about legal contracts and stuff like that, it's going to kind of guess and take this stuff and try to project out. And it's like, And the other thing is, because we talk so much and we don't write, and I'm not being critical, it's just being factual, we use words in a lot of different ways. Well, when you're writing out words, that, and especially in a legal sense, like the word has a
yeah,
certain meaning. Like you got to use the right word. And so if you're not trained into how to use the right word,
yeah.
the AI could think you mean something else as well. I would assume.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's spot on. And I guess coming back around, sorry for the AI tangent that I somehow always get
No,
into.
no, no, that was great.
But
Love it.
to come back around to like, as far as selling a company and any risks involved, I would be very mindful in how you're using AI in your business and how you're instructing employees to use in a business, because more and more we are seeing representations and warranties regarding the use of AI from buyers in purchase agreements. Like particularly if you think of like any business where you might be handling like sensitive information, like if you don't have a policy on what your employees can use AI for and how they can use it, and if they're using like the approved tools, like if they're just throwing sensitive client info into the free version of Chat GPT online, like that could be an issue. And
That's a good
so
point. I hadn't thought about that. I
yeah,
hadn't
so
seen that.
more and more we're seeing that come up in purchase agreements, and it's not like a huge issue. And I wouldn't put it, I would definitely wouldn't put it as a deal killer.
Yeah.
But the odds that you, especially like 3 to 5 years from now, I would almost guarantee that every seller is going to have to rep to we have an AI policy in place that is followed by our employees, and we're not mishandling data that way, and we're complying with laws with respect to AI. So
Okay, so you just kind of blew my mind there. So I've got a few questions. Generally speaking, you write this AI policy, you hire an attorney, they write it for you.
yeah.
How do you then know whether or not your employees are actually going by the AI policy? Like, because you might have Bob who loves Claude and he's just going to put the stuff in Claude. Like, I can see you having the policy, but how do you make sure it's being enforced, or how do you represent this being enforced accurately?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, we're still in the Wild West, right?
Okay.
Like, I'm not aware of like a law outside of certain like regulated industries, like financial advisors and
Hmm.
brokers and things like that. I'm not aware of like a law that would require you to have an AI policy and a certain enforcement mechanism necessarily, right? Like any infringement would probably come in under like some other mishandling of consumer data law or anything like that.
Okay.
But generally speaking, when those policies are in place, like for example, in a regulated industry, like if you're FINRA regulated, they restrict what you're able to text message to
Yeah.
clients, right?
Okay.
You have to have a policy in place, and the principal of the FINRA registered broker dealer is supposed to like review communications and then just have reasonable measures to ensure that the policy is being followed. And so it's kind of like, don't be stupid about it in the sense of like put the policy in place, maybe like have regular check-ins and trainings on the
Hmm.
policy. Maybe if you're issuing company devices, like restrict access to other outside tools, possibly depending on your IT sophistication.
Hmm.
But for the most part, I think if you have the policy in place and are doing reasonable training and prevention on it, as long as you're not like putting your head in the sand when your employees sending you something that clearly came from someone else, I think you're probably okay from a business standpoint.
But to your point, this is something that you need to be talking to your attorney about, saying, "Hey, I just heard this. I want you to update me as the laws progress," because
Yeah.
I'm sitting here thinking as you're talking, man, like no one's doing what I say. No one. Most people aren't doing what you're describing, and they're using Claude, they're using ChatGPT, they're using Grok or whatever,
Mhm.
and maybe they're worried about the private data, maybe they're not, and then maybe they hire someone to automate the stuff, and they don't realize that the automation is actually it's Zapier, but then it's Claude, and then
Yeah.
Zapier again, and they don't realize that AI is actually in there in the data. So yeah, I haven't thought about that. I hadn't seen it come up. So that's a really good point. Like it's something that you got to watch out for because it's like you said, it's not a deal killer today, I don't think. But in 5 years, 10 years, it's
Yeah.
whatever the conversation is, it's going to be changed, and so you just have to be aware of that. That's, yeah, you
Yeah.
gotta,
Even things like I think more and more you're going to see, we'll probably see statutes come in play
mhm,
saying like regarding AI disclosure,
yeah,
requiring companies to disclose when they're using AI. And we recently had a client ask about a marketing campaign that they were doing with AI, and I was like, well, you're probably okay now, but within 5 years, like, who knows if this will be allowed? And it's definitely probably a good idea to like disclose that, how AI is involved in it, just to get out ahead of anything that seems to be coming down the pipeline. But
yeah. Mm. Okay, so we talked a lot.
Another reason to have good advisors that are thinking about this.
No, it really is, because you've got my mind. I haven't heard someone bring that up yet, so it's got me thinking that it's one of those. And I think, let me just pause here. When you hear these discussions, as you alluded to, it's not a deal killer in the M&A world. So many things are negotiable. So you got to understand what is a deal killer, what's illegal, what's legal, what should you be doing, and there's a lot of moving parts. But there's so much advice out there around AI and using it that I'm sitting there going, man, I can see this being, and it might be something that where everyone uses it, so they can't make a lot of laws. I don't know. We shall see. I'm not a lawyer at all, so don't take my advice. But okay, so AI. You talked about kind of getting your Secretary of State filings, your core documents, your employee contracts, stuff like that. One thing that I've seen, but
no, you go.
One thing that I've seen that is really tricky, and I'm curious if you have a stance on it, is the contract law versus the W-2 law, especially with multiple states involved. Is that really that complex and hard to navigate, or is it just that going back to adequate counsel, you don't have adequate counsel because murky? Like, what's your take there?
Yeah, it's an issue that comes up frequently, and my take on it is, unfortunately or fortunately, there are a lot of accountants out there. So most businesses are either just, if they're using employees as contractors and not paying them W-2 wages, right? When you look at the tax code, the laws regarding what qualifies as an independent contractor, it's pretty strict in terms of, like, you can't just take an employee and then pay him a different way and do a couple caveats and make them an independent contractor that way. Like, if they're not pretty clearly an independent contractor, then you're probably at risk that they should have been W-2. And for whatever reason, there's a lot of accountants out there that, like, either aren't informed on that or just seem to not really care about the risk and pretty much will just willy-nilly recommend or allow companies to pay whoever they want W-2. In terms of, like, and so my take is that there are tons of businesses that are paying employees as independent contractors that are just blatantly violating the tax code. And they're just, at this point, they're just hoping that the IRS doesn't come knocking, because I don't think they have much of a defense if they don't, right?
Well, one thing I would say is, and I don't know how this works from a legal standpoint, when I used to work in oil and gas, they would have contractors in their offices, downtown Houston, contractors everywhere. They had W-2s, but contractors everywhere. And I was just like, there's no way you guys are following the contractor law. Like, you're treating these people like W-2s. You're saying they're contractors, but you're treating them like W-2s. And so I don't know if you could ever point the, hey, go to downtown Houston as a defense or not, but maybe try that. Like, give them the bigger fish, because those companies are all breaking the law as far as I would have guessed.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm not, I know enough about tax, but I'm not a strict tax attorney.
Yeah.
I do want to caveat that too. But in terms of how it plays into M&A, like, it's always a question, and you're always going to have to represent that, like, you're classifying your employees accurately. If you are not, it's typically not going to kill the deal, unless the issue where it will kill the deal is if you have employees that you've been treating as contractors that are really W-2 employees. And either the cost of that conversion is going to be too much to support the valuation, or making that conversion for the employees is going to cause them to leave, which is pretty rare, but possible, right?
Yeah. Well, so, I think the first thing you said there, I think is for sure a big risk, is that your margin might change dramatically. If he's got one contractor, two contractors, sure. If you got 75 contractors and 75 employees, well, that's 50%. Your margins are going to shift a lot theoretically. So yeah, that's the big thing, I would say.
Yeah. And so, assuming that those aren't the case, typically the way that it just gets resolved is we just split it at the closing and say that you, as the seller, you're going to be on the hook for all of that leading up to the closing. And so if some claim comes up for anything on your watch, you're going to be on the hook for it ultimately. And then the second the closing happens, we've told the buyer that, hey, all these people may not qualify as independent contractors, and it's the buyer's responsibility to either decide that they're comfortable with that or go fix it.
Yeah.
And that's the way, honestly, that's the way that like 90% of legal risks get resolved in the contract, is you split the risk however you see is fair. And usually that means the seller is going to take the load for whatever they've been responsible for. And then the buyer is responsible to fix it. The only caveat I always give to that is like, that doesn't mean you can just ignore it because of what we said, that sometimes the cost of fixing it, if your margins are so tight or you're so tight somewhere else in your deal, if the cost of fixing it puts that over the edge, then it can put your deal in jeopardy.
Yeah, well, and it could, it's a thing to where the problem is there's kind of the normatives and there's extremes, and the extreme could be that the cost to fix it might not make your valuation hardly anything, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like, oh,
Exactly.
But the buyer realizes that they're not going to buy it for that because they don't want the risk, because the fines and stuff I've heard for some of those violations are crazy, depending on what state you're in and stuff like that. And so it goes back to where we started at. Get good advisors, do the basics, blocking and tackling, just make sure that you're going through, you don't got to tackle this everything today, but the more that you do, whether it's the AI stuff or the contractor W-2 stuff, you get good help. You're in a much better spot, because these are the things. If you're a buyer and you're going to buy a business with a bunch of contractors, you're going to want to make sure that they're classified correctly, because you don't want that risk.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah, that's right.
Okay. All right. So I'm getting ready to wrap up here. I do got to ask you though, what's your prediction for the Big 12 this year? Like that's why I wanted you on, really. I wanted to hear your prediction.
I don't know. I don't dare get my hopes up as a BYU fan. I feel like we've had too many good years in a row, but I like our squad. I'm hoping for a rematch against Tech. Yeah, I think ultimately Texas Tech probably wins the Big 12 championship again. But
man, I don't know, because everyone talks about, one thing that I've learned with college football is that most of the analysts watch just a very small fraction of the games. And so like a lot of the analysts would talk about Will Hammond and how great he was last year. But if you watch the games he played, he wasn't great. And I'm not throwing shade at him. I'm just saying, like the Utah game, we scored a lot of points late. It wasn't a blowout like the first quarter. It was a close game. The Arizona State game, he had that drive, but he didn't do anything that game. And so now he's young, so he's going to progress. So hopefully he gets better. But I'm just not going, oh, yeah, Will Hammond, he's going to take us to the Natty. I had this guy I paid a lot of money to, through Cody Campbell, named Sorsby, to come in, and he's betting on like Italian jockeys riding camels or something, and I don't know, and he was betting on the craziest stuff I've ever heard of. Like, what are you doing? What are you doing? I don't even understand that. And then I didn't even know until today that you're the one who brought him down. I suspected it, but I wasn't sure.
No, it was a cohort, a distinguished BYU attorney.
Okay. Well, where can people connect with you at? Obviously, Sellers Council is here, but where, if they want some legal advice or whatever, where should they go?
Yeah, I mean, my DMs are always open on X at Sellers Council, or you can tag me on there. Email is probably the best way in terms of responsiveness. My email is ddrescher, DRESCHER, at buckhalter.com.
Okay. All right. Well, man, it was good to chat with you as always, and I'm not sure if I'm looking forward to the season or not. We'll see how it goes.
I wish we played each other in the season. I wish we got a crack regular season. But we hope to see you there in Arlington.
You were the school I was worried about last year, so I'm worried about a lot of schools this year because I'm not sure how good Will Hammond's going to be. But
I'm curious to see which. There's always one school that like nobody sees coming and then dominates everybody. So
yeah, that's true.
I don't think it can be BYU, Utah, or Tech because everyone knows us. So we need
very good. Yeah.
Well,
all right, man. Well, listen, thank you so much for your time today, brother.
Take care, brother.